Alright, welcome back. Today is Autodesk 3D Studio Max 2018 YouTube Classroom video number 12. Today we are going to create some water for our island. Last time we were together, we set up our island in the sun without any water around it, and we got to fix that. But first, we should look at one thing that I noticed as I was setting this file up. If you grab your island and you hit W, you can move your island up and down, but the trees don't go with it. This is what we call a teachable moment, because let's say you've got like 100 trees. Well, that's going to be a problem. Okay, 100 trees would be difficult to select and link every single one. So this is a great time to talk about the scene selection tool. Also, if you're like me, your computer might be starting to strain under the weight of all of these edges. So let's see if we can make this object a little easier to work with. Number one, once you start getting a ton of edges in something, it's best to start looking at how you can make things a little more efficient. So what we can do is go through here and see if we can eliminate any edges that we're not actually using much. So we've got a lot of these edges down here that we're not using, and if we eliminate them from the editable poly in the bottom of the stack, that's going to make our whole object way easier to work on. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's turn soft selection off. Turn that off. And then I'm going to make sure I hit F4 so I can see things. And I'm also going to go, instead of high quality, change it to performance. There we go. Now we can start seeing some of this. Now with that, I can start selecting individual edges like this one and make sure that they are running properly all the way around. So I want that one, and I want that one, and we can go the other edge and make sure we get this one, and that goes all the way around. And basically I'm just double clicking the ones on the edge like this. So I'm going to select those edges. I go to loop, remove loop. Now when I remove those loops, it starts changing the actual geometry. If I hit L for left and I hit Z for zoom, I'm going to see if I can find more of those. I'm actually going to grab, I'm going to hold Control. Oh, got to get the right type of selection. I'm going to hit Q until I get the marquee selection, which is the square. Hold Control. I am going to select all of those, but I don't want, I'm going to hold Alt and select all the top ones and all of these. See that edge? I want to get, I'm going to turn grid off for now. I'm going to remove that edge. Loop, remove loop. Boom. See how that works? So now I can do the same thing here too. I can look through. So left view, Z for zoom. I can make sure I grab all of this right through here. Hold Alt, deselect this one, deselect this one. Loops, remove loop. So what I'm doing is I'm slowly getting rid of some of these edges. Now, by doing this, what I'm doing is I'm removing some of the geometry. Every single time I do this, it's actually making the geometry a little bit easier to work with. Because what I'm doing is I'm taking out hundreds of vertices. All right. So, and once those are done, I can just close that up and go back to the top, and it still has most of the same properties as it had before. It's just using a lot less geometry. Okay. So removing loops is really important because that's the best way to remove stuff. If you try removing edges other ways, you're going to get like holes in the geometry or things of that nature. So I'm going to hit P for perspective, just so we're staying in perspective. And I'm going to make sure that I'm on performance. Edge faces is good. Default shading is fine. And then performance, I'm going to go in performance. You could do standard, but I think performance probably is better for now. Okay, so like we said, we're going to select all of our trees. We're going to do that by hitting H. H is the select from scene menu. It also shows you what is connected to what. So if I move this over, you can see that the island itself is here, right? We know that this is the island. These are all the trees that are on top of the island. They're not connected to the island. The treasure chest, which is down there, is connected to the island, and the gold, the hinges, and the lid are all connected to the chest. So wherever the chest moves, all this other stuff will move, and wherever the island moves, the chest will move. We need all of this to move with the island. So I select the top one, hold Shift, select it all, and click OK. What that's done is it selected those objects only. Now I can take those objects, find one of them, like this one, and I'm going to go up here to select and link. Click select and link, find one of your objects, and when your cursor should turn into two little squares that intersect. Click and drag, and then you'll get this striped sort of process, and let go of that with your left mouse button. You're going to let go onto the island. It'll flash, and now when you hit Q, select somewhere else, hit W, select the island, and drag the island around, it moves and the trees and stuff move with it. So that's cool. So now this is all set up. I can hit Control A, get everything, right click, and hide selection. All right. Now sometimes when you do that, the grid also seems to disappear, and no matter if you hit the hotkey, which is G, or not, it doesn't seem to matter. So I want to right click, unhide all, zoom in, hit T for top, and for some reason if I hit the G button now, I get my grid. And if I select all the objects, right click, hide selection, I still keep my grid. So I don't exactly know what's up with that. That could be some sort of weird thing with 3D Studio, I'm not sure. But we are now, what we need to do is we are going to go back to Control Z. Okay, we're going to go here, top view, zoom out a little bit, right click, hide. I'm going to hide it again. Hide selection. Oops. Make sure I have everything. Yes. Okay. I'm going to select it all, hit G, make sure I have my grid, right click, hide selection. Okay, cool. Now I'm going to create a plane. Now the plane and the settings we're going to create with it is it's going to change from person to person depending how large your chest was. It should be the same size as mine. How large your island is, all of those things will change how deep the ocean waves need to be. But if you're following along, I'm going to give you the information you need to do this. So first things first, for the plane, you need a 25,000 unit or 25,000 centimeter square. So we're going to go to square and set this number to 25123. So that's 25,000. And since it's square, it's going to be width and height. And for length segments, I'm going to go ahead and set it to 300 length and width. Now mine's already set because I was doing this before. If you hit create, you're going to get a very, very dense, very square plane. And that's what we want. I'm going to hit P for perspective so we can see it. Okay, now to make our ocean, I'm going to zoom in some so we can see how bumpy the ocean is and we can sort of see a grid on it. Now, to make our ocean, we are actually going to add modifiers to it, but I'm not going to convert it to an editable poly first because I'm not going to work on them individually. I'm going to work just on the entire thing. This will be helpful later if we need to adjust things. For instance, actually, while I'm at it, let's change the title. This should be M for Mesh Ocean, and then also Render Multipliers. See, right now, our object is very small, and okay, so if we were to unhide our selection here, unhide all, you can see our ocean doesn't extend out very far past our island, and that's not going to be that's not going to be functional. We need it to be way bigger. Up close, it kind of looks like it might go pretty far, but it's not far enough. We need it further. So what we do is we can add render multipliers, which I've already done here because once again, it's pulling over from what I had before. But initially, the render multiplier should probably be set to scale for 3 and density for 3. What that does is basically when you render it, it's going to increase the size of this object by 3, and it's going to increase the density of the mesh by 3 while keeping all the other properties the same, which means it'll just be bigger when you're rendering it. And since it's only trying to render one frame, like you can see, I'll hit Shift F so we can see how big the frame is. Let's render it F9. So you can see how it was before and the last time I rendered it. So there you go. That's not terrible, but we could probably increase it to 4 and 4 and hit F9. F9. And you can see it goes further out. And as we get lower to the water, that's going to be it's going to look a lot better because it's going to look like a horizon the lower we get to it. F9. Okay, cool. So there you go. You can tell that that doesn't really, that goes out so far it looks basically flat from the angle we have. So from here, we can sort of start looking at how ripply we want our water to be. Okay, so I'm going to move the ocean up a little bit, not too far up, so it's going to lap against the beach there. Okay, so now we're going to take our plane, which we've selected, and we called M Ocean. We're going to add a modifier to it. We're calling it N for noise. So just type N a couple of times until you get to noise, and then we have some parameters to set. Now initially, we need to sort of figure out how big we want our waves to be. If our trees are that big and our chest is this big, I would guess that we want the Z, which is the up and down, to be more than 1 centimeter for sure. I would guess the waves would be from the lowest to the highest point would probably be, let's say, 2 meters, which is 200 centimeters. Okay, so that's as big as they get. Now scale is how dense we want them to be. So if we set this down to 0 or 1, that's a ton of motion. But if we set to like 1,000, it's a nice slow rolling motion. So we probably need to find somewhere in between. I found 600 to be where I thought it would be good. Now we are talking about big waves here. These are the big ones. So like the overall large waves. And then if you click the fractal, we sort of get this object, or this sort of wave look to it. So our seed is 0, scale is 600, we hit fractal. Now I'm going to animate noise, but not actually do anything besides hit play. And when I hit play, it sort of ripples. Maybe a little unnaturally, but the idea is basically okay. I think it's because this is probably set a little weird. Let's try that again. There you go. So there's our ripple. So that looks pretty good, although it doesn't really look like water. It looks like cheese or something, lava maybe. So we want, the nice thing about, or the cool thing about water is it has sharp points and peaks. So we're going to do that with a push modifier. So click somewhere in this box, go to the modifier tab and type in PU, and you should get push. Now push is going to push all the geometry up or down. In this case, we are going to put a negative modifier on it. So I'm going to set that negative modifier to like 200 because that's about how far our tips are going to be from the top. When I do that, it lowers the overall depth of the water, but it also gives us these nice sharp points. And now if we hit play, you can see it looks a lot more like water. But it also has weird geometric crashing all the way through here. And we can't have that because it looks weird. If you look at the geometry, there's actually clipping where one part of the mesh is going through the other. So we want to keep it, but we want to relax it. So what do? Put some perm on it. Gotta have it relax. So I'm going to hit relax. And then now my relax values, when I messed around with it before, they're going to be 7.75. And I felt an iteration of 2 looked the best because that sort of smoothed it out. So if you hit F9, you can start seeing that it used to be really square, and now it looks kind of like water. I mean, in this case, it's pink, so I'm going to change that to generic blue for now. And I'm going to hit play and see how it looks. There. The relax value might be too high. I hit that. You can change on the fly to sort of see and make sure it's looking the way you want. You want to be careful that it doesn't crash together. But that's pretty good. Maybe a 4, and then redo an iteration there. Maybe an 8 there. That looks pretty good. Alright, so that's our noise, and our noise is sort of moving us in and out. And especially if we just stop this somewhere, it looks like water. And that's what we're looking for. We're not concerned if it looks really great moving, although it doesn't look bad. Now, for modifier list, our final one, we want some little ripples in within. So we're going to put one more noise modifier on there. Noise and O again. And the scale this time is going to be set to 25 because we want a bunch of, we want pretty dense, but we don't want it very strong. So we want a lot of little ripples. And so instead of something larger, we're just going to put 50. And then we're going to hit fractal, and then we'll see how that looks. It's a little stormy, apparently. Let's hit play here. See how it looks. It's a little stormy. We could probably bring that down, probably change this to like 25 maybe. 25. Cool. That's better, I think, because now it's not quite moving so much. We could probably move this to 50, and they'll also calm it down a little bit. So now let's watch it move a little bit. Cool. And if I hit render F9, it might take a second, especially once we hit the water, but it looks pretty good. You can even see that it's somewhat, you can see some of the light reflection. Now let's actually put a real material on it. So I'm going to hit M for material, double click on this one that we haven't used yet. This is 14 default standard. Double click on that, call it MAT_ocean, and we are going to ambient color, make it blue-ish with, get rid of all the red, put some more green, make it darker. Cool. That's whatever blue you like is fine. My spec level is going to be 100. My glossiness is going to be like 80, so it's nice and glossy, and my opacity is going to be 89. Once again, these are all numbers that I sort of just played around with and came up with. You can adjust this and sort of experiment and see what it's like. We're going to make sure you can see it in the viewport, and then I'm going to click this button here to assign it to our ocean, because our ocean should be selected already. Now you may not be able to see it, and that is okay. Hit F9, and you should be able to see a difference. Alright, now without an actual light in the scene, sometimes you're not going to get much. Let's see if we can get standard. There. You can see it sort of reflects if you look around it like this. And then I'm going to turn F4 so you can sort of turn that off and see what it's going to look like. The light itself, if I hit render F9, once I do get a little bit of a shine to it, you can see it looks okay. Those might be a little too wide. I'm going to hit M again and change the glossiness to 100. And that makes it even sharper. So it's a much sharper reflection. Hit F9 and watch how those white spots will get smaller. It'll make it look like it's much further away if it renders here. There you go. Cool. Now, to make it even better, realistically, we should probably make all of these smaller, but I kind of like the way it looks here. There. F9. Now, without a light in the scene, it's not really going to show off really well. Once we put a light in the scene, in the next video, it's going to be much better. But for now, I think we're done. You've got a rendered out version where you've learned about how to adjust the plane modifier. You've learned about the modifier panel. So you've got all of these noise, push, relax, noise. And you know, also one thing before we go, with the plane, you notice the scale and density. If your computer is crashing and it can't handle it, try changing that to like a 2. If you change it equally to 2 and 2, it should render much faster. I'm sure mine will. If I hit render, see, that's significantly faster. And the only problem is you just can't, the ocean doesn't go as far out. So you can still get an idea of how good it looks, and then crank this up for the very last shot when you think you've got everything set. Same thing with segments, height and width segments. If you feel like you're not getting enough geometry to really show off the scene, then you can do it that way too. So that's where we're at. And thank you for watching. We'll see you on video 12 when we set a light and scene and render it out.